You know, when you make a decision that you want to live for God, one of the things that you need to understand is there is demonic forces that are going to try and hinder you. Well, today on Daily Renewal, I want to talk to you about how to deal with times when Satan tries to hinder you. Hello, everybody. This is Pastor Lyle, and welcome to Daily Renewal. Well, one thing that I've noticed in my life is even though I'm somebody who gives my life to Jesus and tries to walk with Him every day, is that there's times where I really feel like there's demonic forces that try to come against me. And really, when we look at the New Testament, this is something that does happen. And so the question is, well, if you are somebody that's following Jesus, don't you have power over all demonic forces? Well, as we talked about yesterday, we were looking into the book of 1 Thessalonians, and Paul was in a situation where he was writing this letter, but before he wrote the letter, he was having a real hard time because he was in a place where he wanted to go and encourage the church in Thessalonica, and as much as he wanted to do it, he felt like he was being hindered. And in fact, we see in verse 18 of chapter 2 of 1 Thessalonians, he says, "Therefore we wanted to come to you, even I, Paul, time and again, but Satan hindered us." And so the idea of Satan hindering him brings up the question, how is this able to happen? Well, when we go through tough times, we have to understand that there's lots of reasons why we go through the things we go through. And often when Satan is hindering us, because we've established here that Satan does hinder us, there's a couple things. The first one, if you're being hindered by Satan, the first thing that you should look at is there sin in your life? Because ultimately, if you open the door for sin to come in, and that's what sin does. Sin opens opportunity or gives Satan a foothold to be able to do things in your life. Often the things that are happening are because we've given him permission through sin. And we've done multiple episodes on that. But obviously, it wasn't because of sin that this was happening. And often what happens in the church, and this is somewhere I wasn't planning on going, but we need to understand that often in the church, when bad things happen to us, we have to understand that when bad things happen, it isn't always because of sin. Sometimes it's because God is trying to do something in your life that will bring increase or that will help you get to another level in your relationship with Him, as we're about to see. So Paul is going through this situation, and he's longing to talk to this church. He's heard rumors. People have come in behind and tried to ruin his reputation and twist his teaching. And he's concerned for the church in Thessalonica. And so he wants to go. And you think that'd be a good reason, that God wants to do something with these people. And when Paul tries to go, he's hindered by Satan. Well, why would God hinder such a good thing? Why would God hinder Paul from wanting to help that church? It just seems like a wrong time. Well, and then he goes on and he says, well, what this did is it encouraged Paul to do something else. And what was it? He desired to send Timothy. And he sent Timothy. Again, we talked about this yesterday, and in verse 2 of chapter 3, it talks about the fact that he sent Timothy to help establish and encourage them concerning their faith. Well, now, he's writing this letter to tell them how encouraged he was as a result of sending Timothy. So as a result of Satan hindering Paul, what happened is this actually backfired on the kingdom of darkness. This ended up being something that as the enemy, Satan, tried to use this to destroy Paul and discourage Paul, it ended up doing the exact opposite. And that's the principle that we need to understand today. You may be going through things where it's very obvious that you're being blocked. There's something happening in the spiritual realm that is blocking you from doing something that it seems like, you know what, this is something I'm trying to do for God. Why am I being hindered? Well, it very well might be, and in fact, it is. If it is something that Satan's blocking, you have to understand. In Job 1 and 2, we see that Satan always wants to bring devastation upon us. And in the book of Job, and you can read this yourself, as I don't want this to be an hour-long video, but the principle of the fact that Satan wants to destroy you, and there's nothing he can do other than what God allows. We have to realize that anything that happens in our life, God has already foreseen. And even though it might look like it's been allowed for your destruction, God is not planned on your destruction. In fact, God has planned to bring you to a good end. So anything that Satan has done, even though it's meant for destruction, God has already foreseen it and made a way not only to get you through, but to use it to bring betterment to you. And we see this, that in this result, well, how did that work in Thessalonians? Well, let's look at it this way. As a result of Satan hindering Paul, Paul made the decision to send Timothy, and then from there to write this letter. And this letter now has been used for 2,000 years to bring instruction and to bring encouragement to you and I and millions of others that call upon the name of the Lord to show us how we get through such situations. So what the enemy meant for evil, God turned and used it for good. And we see even in later on, we can see another instance where Satan was allowed to do something in Paul's life. In 2 Corinthians 12:7, Paul says this, "And lest I should be exalted above measure by the abundance of the revelations, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I be exalted above measure. Concerning this thing, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it might depart from me. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly, I will rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore, I take pleasure in my infirmities, in reproaches, in needs, in persecutions, in distresses, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong." Now, I want to point out to you how Paul looks at this. He says here that there was a thorn in the flesh that was given to him. He's looking at this messenger of Satan. He's looking at this as the fact that, well, God gave me this messenger. Well, anytime Satan is allowed to work in our life, we don't often look at this and be thankful for it. But see, Paul was embracing the fact that he understood that if Satan was being allowed to work in his life, that God already foresaw it. And if God was allowing it, then he needed to learn how to embrace it, because if he learns how to embrace it properly, it's going to bring advancement to Paul. Remember, God's plan for us is to be molded and shaped into the image of Christ. And it's by leaning on the power of God. And notice what this did. God said to him, after Paul had asked for this thorn to be taken, what is God's response? He says, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Well, what is God's grace? We've mentioned this many times on Daily Renewal. God's grace is his unmerited favor. You can do nothing to earn it. But what it is it's the power of God that enables you to do what you cannot do in your own strength. And so we see here grace. He says, my grace is sufficient. My power is sufficient for you. He says, my strength is made perfect. So that idea of him giving us his grace, he's strengthening us so that now we will rely upon him instead of relying upon our own strength. And he says this, he says, my strength, for when I am weak, I am strong. Our tendency is to rely upon our own strength. And see, as Paul was advancing in his walk with God, God was allowing this messenger of Satan, and remember, Paul is looking at this as a good thing, because now, as a result of this, Paul is learning how to rely upon God to get him through situations. Rather than having a pity party and saying, you know what, this isn't fair. Why is God allowing Satan to hurt me? No, this messenger that's trying to hurt him, he understands that God is using this as a tool to help mold and shape Paul to be the man that God has created him to be. It's allowing Paul to see that Jesus is making a way for him to walk by faith and walk in the power of God, not in his own strength. So understand this. Once you've looked at your life and you've taken care of sin, and yes, we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. There's always things we can work on. But ultimately, it very well could be in your life that Satan has been allowed into certain situations. And if he has, here's the confidence that you can have and you need to have. Understand that God has always made a way through. As Romans 8:28 says, embrace the fact that all things, this trial you're going through, is working toward the good. There's something in here there's a silver lining that God has put in there so that you will rely upon him. And if you embrace the trial properly, there will be more transformation in your life. There will be something at the end of this that will be a benefit. There may be a messenger of Satan that is sent to buffet you, but God will use this to bring you to places that you never could have been before. So embrace it today. Well, I hope you got something out of this today. If you did, I just want to encourage you to subscribe to our channel. Hit the like button below. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, so you can like our Facebook page. That helps us. Share the videos with as many people as you feel that they will help. Also, if you're in the Kamloops area, please feel free to drop by River City Church. We'd love to have you. Having said that, God bless you, and have a great day.